geek out here for a minute and talk about what you're doing right now.
Sure.
You're in charge of a really, what seems to me an incredibly important area right now for the future, which is all the local initiatives, what you're going to see on your mobile device. What are you working on right now that you can discuss with us? What kinds of, I mean, we're talking about everything. I saw you talk about, for example, you might be in a restaurant and you can also get an extra little menu on your mobile that'll tell you more than the menu the restaurant hands you, or where the bathroom is in the Computer History Museum, things like that.
Sure, and some of this stuff is very basic, but it just needs to work. So one of the things that's happened, especially in location, is that now that we all have these mobile devices and that they can locate you, you can understand a person's context and how to be helpful to them. Really connect the physical world to the virtual world. You know where the person is in the physical world, and you know what on the web is relevant to that place, what menu is relevant, what information is relevant, what historical facts are relevant. And it's really fun to pull those things together. So some of the basics that have to work are local searches. Today on Google.com, the number of searches and the percentage of searches that are done every day that are locally oriented, 20%. So 1 in every 5 searches done on Google is about local information. So my team is working really hard on that. On the mobile phone, as you can imagine, the percentage is even higher. We're also working really hard on maps, and maps on the phone is something. How many people used maps on their phone today? This is sort of the insight that I had, one of the insights I had when I was picking Google. Like, I took it for granted because I've always been a really curious person and I loved internet search. But when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go, I was like, all these different companies I could work for, are there any of them where I could imagine using the product at least once a day? Because in 1999, you did like 1 internet search a day. Today we all maybe do 20 or 50, or according to my search history, somewhere between 85 and 100. But if it starts with once a day. And when I realized after working on search for 10 years, search and related things, all of a sudden I realized I couldn't remember the last day when I hadn't used maps on my phone at least once. And I started to realize that that percentage and use case, especially as the map becomes more and more personalized, more and more useful, was just going to explode. And a lot of what was really fun and interesting and exciting right now was local, mobile, social. And so making sure that maps work on the phone is really important. Google Maps for mobile, which we call inside GMM, has more than 250 million active users of the product. So it's just a huge group of people who are using this on a daily basis. It's really very exciting. And then there's all kinds of fun things, because once you get the basics of local search down and you understand how all this information relates to location and you get maps down, you can start doing really interesting things that I like to refer to as contextual discovery. If I understand your context and where you are, what can I tell you? So, for example, if you're sitting in a restaurant, now we even have Google Maps indoors. We know that you're sitting in that restaurant. It might be the case that the waiter hands you one menu. We can produce another menu that's a social menu. It shows you what the most popular dishes are, what dishes your friends liked. You could be a tourist in a city, or you could just be someone local. But if with a little bit of location history, we can tell whether or not you've been somewhere before. And if you're standing in front of, I was in Austin for South by Southwest this past year, me being there for the first time, give me facts about the state capitol building, right? If it's on your commute and you walk past it every day, show you the news. We should show you news. We should show you, your email. We should show you updates from your social network. So I think that context can play a big role. And interestingly, context, location can also help us tap into a level of accuracy that we haven't seen before. There's all kinds of really difficult searches that we aren't good at today. And I remember one day.
What would be an example? What are we not good at?
Well, one day, for example, there's just some searches you can't do without context, or you can't do very well. So there was one day where I cataloged all the searches I didn't do, either because I didn't have a device available for search, or because it's just not possible to do them. The query of what is that bird over there is like impossible to do a search on. You could describe it. You could take a picture. What would you do with a picture? But if you can take a picture, and now with things like Google Goggles and visual recognition, we can find the bird, and we can figure out that it's brown, and it's rough size and scale. And now, not only do we know that it's a brown bird, but we know that it's January, and you're in Northern California. You can narrow it from 3,000 brown birds to maybe 5 or 10, at which point in time, a searcher can just visually pick through those answers. So something that would be completely impossible, a bird with no context, identify it. Suddenly becomes much easier when you have context, location, and time.
I have to say that excites me, because when I've traveled and I've seen birds and I'm like, what is that absolutely gorgeous bird, right? And you have this sense, and I've tried Google Goggles and it hasn't given me the answer. So
we're getting there, but context will help. Context will help.
I'm just telling you.
And of course, there's always the zoo problem. But the good news is now with Google Maps, hopefully we'll know you're at the zoo, and we'll know that all bets are off as a species. But